welcome to episode 88 of our Killa No Filla podcast with me, Rachel Fairburn, and Kiri Pritchard-McLean. Just before we start, we'll do our usual disclaimer. This isn't hero worship. We do this podcast because we have a mutual interest in serial killers, and as long as we are doing this podcast, it stops us from writing to them in prison.
Yes. What episode is it?
88.
Fucking hell. Two fat ladies.
That's it. Bingo, two fat ladies, isn't it?
Yeah, I love it. Every now and then there'll be like a news story. It's like, you can't say two fat ladies anymore because being fat's banned. Oh, God.
Being fat's banned.
You know, whatever mad shit they've come up now. You've got to say two lesbians who are raising a child and that's perfectly normal. No one is saying that at all.
Oh, episode 88. This is a listener suggestion. So we do a little call out every so often because we like to hear who you'd like us to do. Some people, and I'm going to say it, some people don't understand the criteria. Like, the DC Sniper is a spree. Sure, we might do it one day, but not the DC Sniper, the episode, the theme. But here's a pet hate of mine. Can you do this one? Yeah, we can do. Oh, such and such a podcast did an episode on it. I couldn't give a fuck.
Yeah.
The page for all Killa No Filla is for all Killa No Filla. I don't want to hear about fucking bints drinking Prosecco talking about murder. So, take that to another page. Also, while I'm on one, it's very early this morning, that you've caught me at my best, haven't they? This is a nice thing. We want to say thank you to the person who messaged us to tell us how to get our episodes back properly on Libsyn.
Yes. Thank you.
Really
so
helpful. That took so much pressure off us. It was great. Really appreciate that. So thank you so much. But yeah, listener suggestions. What I'm trying to say is thank you for your suggestions. So this was a suggestion, and the suggestion is John Wayne Glover, a horribly named killer called the Granny Killer.
Yeah, you're going to hate this one.
I fucking hate this. Do you know why? I don't like the name because I find it very ageist. I've got a real bee in my bonnet about how the elderly are thought of in not just, Britain. In fact, a lot of other countries think better of them. What is it that the Scandinavians say? You can judge a society by how it treats its elderly. Yeah. I am very much on the side of we need to be a bit more respectful to older people and stop tarring them with the same brush. Like, people used to go, oh, teenagers, they're nuisances. It's all the teenagers causing problems. You're tarring everyone with the same brush. Not all elderly people are obnoxious, racists, But anyway, this is a different show.
Some of them are murderers.
But yeah, the Granny Killer, I don't like the name. And also, I fucking hate these murders more than most murders. It really gets me.
Yeah, I really dislike the murders. Controversial phrase. But do you know what it is the stuff that we'll get to it later, but the stuff he was doing in nursing homes before, I fucking hated that. When he was a pie salesman, that's really sent me under.
Yeah. I mean, the best thing about him was the pie sales.
Yeah. I've just got a weird thing about, do you reckon people... No, do you know what? Let's get into it.
Go on. No, say it. I want to hear it.
Well, I think sales reps can be a weird, transient type of people.
Yeah.
And often people who can't keep jobs doing anything else. # not all salespeople. But I don't know, I feel like there's been a fair few comedians, the other worst people, serial killers, who've done that sort of door-to-door salesman shtick. And for some reason...
Albert DeSalvo.
Yeah. For some reason, selling pies is the fucking worst one for me. I'm like, get away from food.
Stop ruining pies.
I imagine he's got big, horrible fingers. And it's all over the pies.
Yeah, they're all in the pies. Get your big, fat, horrible fingers out of my fucking delicious pies, you pig.
Yeah. And also, if it's like, if you're willing to do that to an elderly woman in palliative care, what have you done to a fucking short crust steak and kidney while I haven't been looking?
He's definitely scratched his dick and touched the pie.
Yeah, they're like, have you got a glaze on top? You must have cooked them with egg. And he's like, yes, with egg.
Do you know what? You've said the worst thing now. Everything's going to be a breeze. So this is John Wayne Glover. He was an English-Australian serial killer, and he is responsible for killing 6 that we know of, 6 elderly women who were aged between the ages of 60 and 93, and he murdered them over 14 months in between 1989 and 1990. So very quick, all this. And obviously because of this, the Australians gave him the classic laid-back name of the Granny Killer.
Yeah, he was. He also was really, if reports are to be believed, because we've only got the crimes he was found guilty for, he was very late to the game. It was in like his late 50s when he started killing.
Maybe he was like, well, you know, the kids are grown up. I'm getting towards retirement. It's time for me to do something for me.
Genuinely, I listened to something that was saying it was his version of a red sports car.
Oh, fucking... Oh, my God.
Isn't it mad? Like, women just cut their hair short and dye it pink or start doing yoga, and men either buy a sports car that they then accidentally murder someone with,
or
murder people.
Bootcut
or
jeans.
Or worse, wear bootcut jeans.
Maybe have like a 90s hairdo that they always wanted, some frosted tips or something.
Yeah, and wear like bootcut jeans that are worn like on the waist are the most fucking disgusting thing. You can see their balls all smushed up like a fucking stress reliever.
Oh, God, don't.
Ironically, the most stressful thing I can see is a pair of 60-year-old knackers all bunched up in a pair of jeans.
Bunched up. Oh, it looks really... I know, I think we might discuss this before. I fucking hate to have bollocks, me.
Yeah, do you know what? Like, I can deal with... I've got some big old tits to work around, but I weirdly think bollocks would be more of a pain in the arse. And also they get longer, like tits, but, you know, they get longer.
I know, like... like tits. They're horrible, aren't they? They're really horrible, long bollocks.
Yeah, not a fan.
Anyway, he was originally from Wolverhampton in the Midlands. And there's not... His mother gets blamed a lot, unnecessarily here, as is often the way. So they say that his mother had, a lot of boyfriends and was promiscuous. And they have decided that was a contributing factor to him.
This is like, you know, when they quite often blame the mother.
Yeah.
But I would
Quick
say
question, where's his fucking dad?
Yeah, well, she fucked off without him, but this is the slightest example of extreme violence being pinned on a woman I've ever heard. Like, at least with, like, Edmund Kemper, you're like, do you know what? She does sound like a fucking bitch. Whereas poor old Frida just sounds like an absolute fucking legend. So his parents married very young in Wolverhampton, working class family. Now, as soon as the kids grow up and start going to school, she had quite a few kids, lost one, as in had a miscarriage, not as in just lost them in the supermarket.
It's a big bloody supermarket, never saw them again.
So
just a skeleton near the crisps.
Oh, God. Oh, just in one of those little, you know, those things that are like a postman pat van outside the supermarket. Just in one of those.
Hold on.
So basically...
Is it Halloween, Mummy? There's a skeleton in it.
Can I have a penny for the guy? So basically she was an absolute fucking player and used to sleep... Well, as soon as the kids got to school age, she was like, this is not a very stimulating life for me. I used to go down to the pub and she'd have sort of affairs. So she had boyfriends, she had several husbands. She was just very, I'll say it, fucking cool. And her promiscuity, which I fucking dislike the term anyway, like it's... You know what that is? That's a work ethic when it comes to sex.
Yeah, but also it's like as if the men weren't partaking in this willingly.
Yeah.
Sorry,
yeah.
Are we all witches that have, you know, have we bewitched them? Is this what we've done?
So she had 4 husbands, several boyfriends, and I've read a really interesting analysis like this, and it was like, this is where John Wayne Glover's problem started, because this behaviour told him that women were sexual objects. And I was like, no, this behaviour tells him that men are sexual objects, and that is absolutely fine.
Yeah, like, I honestly, I don't understand how women can be so blamed.
Well, also the fact that you can simultaneously call her a voracious slut and then accuse her of being disempowered and a sexual object. Which one is it? Like, is she having sex with loads of people at her behest? Or is she just something being passed around? Like, they can't even agree amongst themselves.
But also, can I say as well, we've just got his word for this.
Oh, it's loads of fucking speculation.
This is what he's said, because we're not getting this straight from the horse's mouth, are we?
No.
Presumably because she's got a cock in it. But...
Fucking hell.
But, do you know what I mean? It's not her telling us this story, it's him saying it after the event. Because, you know, he can say, you know, anyone can say what their childhood was like when everyone involved is dead. So
Yeah, that's the dream for me.
Yeah.
There's this same article as well that was talking about, you know, oh, you taught him that women were only sexual objects. They said the problem with Frida was that no man was good enough for her. And it's like, what a brilliant sentiment. Get it on a fucking T-shirt.
Woman has standards.
Yeah. Yeah.
Sorry. Heaven forfend.
Also, she got married 4 times, so she clearly thought someone good enough. She ended up settling down with a guy who was fucking rich. So there you go. She found what was good enough for her, and it was a man who was absolutely loaded.
Do you know what? Everyone knows how I feel about live, laugh, love signs and stuff like that, but I actually saw a sign the other day in a charity shop that made me laugh, right? It was a little sign and it said, it's probably like a Joan Rivers joke, but it was a little sign done in like really nice sort of italics, and it said, they put a man on the moon, why can't they send the rest of them? I was like, that's really fun. That's got to be like a Joan Rivers joke or something, hasn't it?
Does feel like it, yeah.
It does. But it tickled me. Didn't buy it, just had a little laugh at it.
Also, absolutely love the idea of whatever woman that was the perfect present for.
Oh, amazing. Yeah. But now the fact that it's in a charity shop.
Yeah.
I hope she's well.
She's been killed.
She's been killed. She's been killed. So
he dropped out of school at 14 and joined the army. Now, prior to joining the army, he had been sort of committing petty crimes for a long time in Wolverhampton. He had a history of stealing many clothes and handbags. So he lies about this, gets into the army, and then after a while they find out he has a criminal record and boot him out.
Yeah. He then emigrated to Australia in 1956 or 1957. He didn't have any qualifications, which I don't know why they mention that, because I don't think that's
because
relevant to most things.
Now immigration's quite strict, isn't it? I think in Australia, but this was part of the £10 POM scheme that started in 1947. So when he arrived in Australia, he had $3 to his name. But basically, the idea was that you could register your visa for $10, and the whole idea was like, so bad. Australia doesn't have enough people. We need to repopulate it. And it's like, no, it had plenty of people. You just killed them all. What you mean is we want more white people. So loads of people emigrated from the UK to Australia, and then New Zealand followed as well. I didn't realise how many famous people had come through this scheme. Like a couple of Australian prime ministers, like Julia Gillard, is it? You know, the red-headed one? She's from Barry in Glamorgan in Wales. Really? Yeah. And she had a lung infection, and her parents were like, let's move there because the heat will help her lung infection.
Oh.
Isn't that mad?
That's interesting. I wonder, you know, Kylie Minogue's grandmother was Welsh. Or is
really?
Welsh. Yeah, so I wonder if she was part of that.
The Bee Gees, they were born in Chorlton.
Yes.
And they lived there, and then in the like late 50s they went to Queensland, which is where they started doing music.
They were what I would describe as a bunch of nuisances, weren't they, growing up? They were quite...
Yes. Tearaways.
Yeah, they were tearaways, yeah, and I think that's part of the reason they moved to Australia. AC/DC, I'm sure they were part of that, yeah, because they were all...
Angus Thingy is his name.
I'm sure they were all born in Scotland and moved to Australia as young children. I'd love to find out how my family started in Australia, but part of me wouldn't. It certainly wasn't the £10 POMs, let me tell you.
Well, I listened to a podcast which had 2 Australians on it, and they just sort of, there was a little bit of like, oh, well, they used to let anyone over here kind of thing. And bearing in mind they're 2 white Australians, so not native. And they were like, well, I'm surprised he was even let in with that kind of thing. And like, oh yeah, the riffraff that we allowed in. And it's like, historically, that's probably your family as well.
But also there was a lot of mining people, like miners and stuff like that moved over there. Yeah. So a lot of people there was a lot of communities from Cornwall and South Wales that moved to Australia. Which must have been insane. Imagine living in a little village in Cornwall and then moving to fucking the heat, being like, I know, the fuck is this? That's what, you know, that's apparently what the Australian accent has. I can't remember which actress it might have been Anna Friel, I think it was, that was talking about this. So when you learn an Australian accent, apparently an Australian accent is a sort of a southern England sort of London accent. But how it came about was people moved from that area, and because it was so hot in Australia, your speech naturally slowed down.
Oh my God.
So apparently that's how the accent sort of evolved. And you can really, I think you can hear that, like, so like if you're talking and then like, that's right, that's how it.
Oh wow!
Comes
So they're
out.
just fucks. They're like, "Can you get me a drink?"
Yeah, they
please?"
just it just naturally the sort of the pace of speech just apparently naturally slowed down and evolved into a slower way of speaking and a drawn out kind of like
Wow.
that kind of thing.
I've just realised as we've been talking, because I didn't realise New Zealand had this scheme. So do you know my mum used to live in New Zealand as a child? One of the reasons that I'm called Kiri.
Oh, I didn't know this.
Yes.
These fucking nuggets of information that just keep.
Rachel, I'm very cultured. Yes. My great-grandmother was French, sure.
Bloody hell.
But she was from Brittany, so the Celtic bit as well. I'm just basically Brythonic through and through. Yeah, so my grandmother and my granddad, I never met him, I don't know what to call him, granddad. My nana, basically, and her husband moved out to New Zealand when my mum was a little girl and lived there for a couple of years and then decided to move back because it wasn't what they envisioned, and I think my mum was very unhappy there and my nana was very unhappy. So yeah, but that's where I've got a Maori name. So
Interesting. My mum has a Australian name. So anyway, where were we up to? When he was in Australia in 1962, he committed 2 assaults and he was in charge with 4 counts of larceny. And he was charged with those, but he was put on a 3-year good behaviour bond. I hate the word larceny.
yeah.
I hate the word larceny and I hate the word affidavit.
Really?
Hate them. I don't know why. They just give me the ick.
But yeah, he immediately basically gets in trouble. These sorry Rachel, larceny charges in Victoria and a theft in New South Wales. He just immediately makes a fucking nuisance of himself. Now, one of the places he lived, he had a job working for ABC, the Australian telly company, basically. He would go door to door and install televisions. Again, quite a transient job where you also get to know people's houses, like BTK and the security alarms.
Yeah.
That's what it reminds me
ADT,
of.
wasn't it?
Yeah. So, he lived in this boarding house with a bunch of girls and a few other different people, like a big house that's chopped up into loads of rooms. This is in the early 60s. So, I listened to a podcast where there's an interview with a woman who lived with him, and it's really interesting. So, she recounts one story where apparently he was a bit older than them all. He was like 28, he was very handsome. They thought he was quite sophisticated. He's a bit of an entertainer. He used to sing very beautifully. He used to always play pranks, always wind people up.
He
just
sounds
a wind
awful.
Up. Yeah, it does, doesn't it? Exhausting
Hate
to live
him.
with. Yeah. But she was like, it sort of tease you like a big brother would, like a wind-up merchant. So one day she's in the bath and there's a canopy over the bath, so she can't see out of it. But she could hear giggling outside the door. Ugh. And she's singing. And she was like, just all of a sudden I was aware there was someone in the room with me. But I hadn't heard anything and I could just hear giggling outside the room. And she was like, I knew it was him. And so she was like, John, get out of here. Go away kind of thing. And he goes out. But she was like, one of the things I remember is that he got into the room and was stood right next to me without me even hearing.
Fucking weirdo.
It is weird, isn't it?
It's
absolutely weird. And he always wore soft shoes, apparently.
But so no one could hear him?
Yeah, well, that's sort of the theory, yeah, that he was a creeper. Well, speaking of, so he changed jobs a lot. So he worked for ABC for a bit. He worked on the trams as a conductor when he first got work. But he would always get sacked because he would steal. And he'd skim off the top, and he was always late when he was a tram conductor. And, when they went to cash out the money, something was always missing. And when he worked for ABC, they basically suspected him of stealing. And when the police went to search his flat, there was fucking mad shit in there. Musical instruments, surfboards, loads of stuff he didn't need or was using.
Oh, he's hoarding a crime now, is it?
But it's all stolen stuff he doesn't need. He just has a compulsion to do it. But he'd already jumped flats by then. This is an old flat of his. So apparently the first time, other than the bath thing, that they feel like something's a bit weird is one night they're all sat on the veranda drinking, which is what they used to do most of the time, because other than one older woman who lives in the house, they're all quite young. And they're sat on the veranda. Now, they've got a curfew at 10 p.m. So they're sat there. It's about 6 o'clock in the evening. And they look across the street and they're like, is that John? And they can see him crouched down, peering through a window of one of their neighbours. And they were like, that's him. And they were all basically, he doesn't realise that he's being watched being a peeping Tom.
God.
It's so creepy, right?
I hate it. Do you know, I often think, like, the idea of a peeping Tom gives me absolute creeps. Yeah. So I'm glad that where I live is higher up. I sometimes think, it's good this, because no one can see in, really. Do you know what I mean? It's got to be fucking hell. I mean, what's wrong with men? Women aren't peeping Toms. Just you show me a woman that has been a peeping Tom, and I will eat my hat.
Yeah, it's very unusual, right?
What we're going to see is some bloke scratching his bollocks and sniffing his hands. Oh, lovely. Oh, yes, please, more of that. Trailing his dick all over the bedding. Oh, yeah.
Oh, fuck.
Fucking hell.
So while he's living in this boarding house, he gets with a girl called Kathy there, who's really sort of besotted by him. Now, at the time, there is a murder of an elderly woman about 10 minutes away from where they live in a neighbouring borough called Windsor. So this is in 1963, about a year after he moves in. Her name is Irene Killa. She is a champion bridge player. And she was walking home from a church meeting and she was stabbed to death. And they were all everyone's talking about it because it was a very unusual crime. Everyone's a bit worried because, you know, she wasn't late at night working home, all that stuff that, you know, would make it a topic of conversation. Then the landlady of the house, like manager of the house, says, that poor Irene Kidler. It was weird that they interviewed John about it, wasn't it? Oh. So the girls are all like, what the fuck? So apparently the police had arrested John and brought him in for questioning because someone said it was him. I saw him do it. Now,
oh my God,
yeah,
I think it was him.
Well, it happened at about 9:30, and the curfew was 10 o'clock, and he was in the house by 10, but it was only 10 minutes away. And Kathy, who was a very honest girl, was like, oh no, he was in my room when it happened, or it happened just before 10, somewhere between 9:30 and 10 o'clock. She was like, oh, he was with me. But the woman on the podcast is like, do you know what? There's no way she would have lied. And she was so honest and squeaky. But she's like, he was really cunning. I think he must have changed the clocks back a bit, or, done something. She was like, I just know that she wouldn't have lied, but I also think that he did it. So after all this, they're getting just like more and more wary of him. And one of the girls who lives there goes out with a police officer, and she was like, could you see if there's any info on him? And he pulls the records, and they find all these previous charges of, burglary and all this kind of stuff. Now, about that time as well, there's a rumour that he has hit Kathy. Ugh. So his behaviour is just getting more and more sort of like unacceptable.
Well, he's just getting comfortable, isn't he? That's what it is.
Yeah, he is. Yeah. He's done the charming, and now he's getting his feet under the table. Yeah. So one night, this woman, she's making dinner, and he's fucking winding her up and, giving her bullshit. And she's got a knife in hand because she's chopping something. And she was like, I really do regret saying this. But she says, he's like antagonising her. She holds the knife up and waves at him and goes, remember what happened to Mrs. Kidler? And he fucking loses it. And his mood switches from being like jovial and winding up to absolute like pure rage. And everyone's like, what the fuck is wrong with him? So that's one of the reasons. Yeah, but that's one of the reasons she thinks, like, she's like, that's another reason I think that it was him, because he just had such a visceral reaction to this murder that he had been questioned about.
You making fun of my murders?
Yeah. So several of the murders around this time in Melbourne occurred. One before Irene and another two afterwards that are still unsolved. A very similar MO of like incredibly violent older women. They assumed it was their, sons or, partners or whatever. And they were all found innocent. So they're still unsolved. Now, there's one thing here you're going to fucking hate. So here's the last.
Go on.
So, in the boarding house, it was basically like young people. John was one of the older ones, except for one lady who was an elderly deaf woman who lived in the room next to John's. And they would hear her shouting, and she'd be shouting, get away, stop looking at me, she's like, you're a pervert, stop it, go away. And she's like, I don't need you to look at me, I could get any man I wanted. Ooh. And they think it was John watching her either in her room or outside, And he would also, like, he would antagonise her when she would start shouting. They could hear him shouting like back, like, "Oh yeah, don't worry, I'll chase him away. I'll come up there and sort it out." So he used to, like, wind her up as well. This, you know, woman who can't hear very much, who's obviously distressed, and they just thought she was, like, losing her marbles, basically. But they now think that John was doing stuff.
I hate him.
Yeah, I knew you would.
I hate him so much. He's like, oh God. Yeah,
Do you know what phrase I'm going to use, Rachel?
Go on.
Pick on someone your own size.
Well, exactly. He's a piece of shit, he is. His mum has moved to Australia as well, we should say. She moved a couple of years after he had emigrated there. Mm-hmm. And he gets married to a woman called Gay Rolls.
Yes.
which I think Gay Rolls is like it's the best sandwich shop in the gay village in Manchester. But then it'd be like, why have you called it Gay Rolls and not Gay Balms? That'd happen. Gay Rolls, what a name. It's like, and next up with her dancing dog, it's Gay Rolls.
I love it.
I love it.
Her full, like, Christian name is Jacqueline Gale Rolls, but she went by Gay. And we were talking about this the other day, that, like, Gay is such a good first name.
It's a nice name.
But it's not going to come back, is it?
No.
No one's going to call their kid Gay.
It's a nice name to give a baby, isn't it?
Yeah, and it's, you know, it's one of those things where you're like, well, that's ruined. Not by gay people, obviously, but by people using it as a pejorative.
Yeah.
Not that I'm like, right, another thing the gays have ruined.
Oh, thanks, guys.
This is in Melbourne in 1968 that he marries Jacqueline Gale, Gay Rolls. They met while he was working in Melbourne at a booze shop, one that sold, like, wines and spirits, so not like a one with a cage in it.
Oh, is that, as they call them in Australia, a bottle shop.
Oh, a bottle shop, not an offie.
Yeah. No, they call it a bottle shop.
Is it just a Salford thing where you walk into a shop and it's a cage with loads of booze behind the cage?
Oh, you mean it's
like bargain booze?
Yeah, I think that is a thing for any. We used to have one near Harper Hay where you'd go in and they have to give you the alcohol from behind the thing because people can't be trusted. So if it's in a rough area, they have to put the booze behind a fucking cage. So you can see the booze, but you got to ask for the booze.
Yeah, because I remember
it's like the Museum of Booze,
the prison of booze,
the prison of booze.
I remember coming from, obviously, Country Bumpkin and walking into a bargain booze in Salford precinct. One of the worst precincts in Manchester, I would say. And I walked in and it's a completely caged room with a tiny hatch at the end. Like at the end of the night when you want to go to a service station and they let you speak to someone through a hatch. Yes. And often plated glass so you can't shoot them as well. And they're sat behind that. And it was then I was like, I'm a long way from rural North Wales. This is like...
Yeah, it's quite a common thing.
Yeah.
But this is, I always think as well, this just shows the British way. So, you know, in a supermarket, obviously. And obviously people with alcohol issues might steal booze as well. And also it's a good thing to sell on if you're going to thieve.
Yeah.
But the fact that the alcohol in this country and, you know, the UK is so abused and used so frequently... The fact that we've got security tags on it all.
Well, I think it's more that it's so protected. Like,
yeah, please, can we please think of the alcohol?
Imagine if women were as well protected as fucking Bacardi breezes. That's my the only thing more protected than fucking a crate of Stella in Salford is Beyonce and Joe Biden.
Do you remember when I brought a bottle of Jack Daniels to your house and it still had the security tag on?
I do remember that, Rachel, yeah.
I'd paid for it. I'd been through the correct channels. And unfortunately, there was a security tag still on it. We had to saw it off, didn't we?
We did have to saw it off.
It wasn't easy.
I've had that as well. I've got a bottle of Penderyn, a lovely Welsh whiskey. And sometimes when you do a big shop, things slide. And they had forgotten to take the tag off. But it was so funny because we often, like, when people are around, we always try and give them, like, Welsh stuff. We're like, this is a really nice Welsh brand. This is, like, we try and give them Welsh coffee, Welsh booze, all that kind of stuff. Because we're tedious patriots. And, I mean, he's English, but actually, the other day he was like, yeah, I feel Welsh, and I nearly openly wept. But I think it's just because he likes saying that the holidaymakers need to go back home, and that feels Welsh enough for him.
That's his Welshness.
Yeah. So, so we decant our Penderyn bottles into the one with the tag on because it's just funnier. So, we'll get a new bottle of it and we're like, it's fucking funny to have...
Oh, I like that, yeah.
Something with a tag on when you're showing people around.
I bought a skull decanter the other month and put my drink... I never drink in the house. Ever. So, that decanter will have that booze in it for fucking the next century.
But then it'll be vintage. Well, I'll tell you what. Yeah. Next time I'm over, we'll have a little nip from the skull.
Let's do that. Yeah, because I never drink it. It just never crosses my mind. Never drink on my own. Never drink in the house, which is good actually because I'm a classic binge drinker, me. But enough about alcohol.
Sorry, yes. So basically, they meet. He's working at this booze shop. Now she's quite middle class. Her dad is called John Rolls, and he really likes John Wayne, and finds her very charming. And because there could have been some sort of judgment there because he was one of these £10 poms, and people cast all sorts of aspersions about their background. Now the mum, Essie, did like him at first. And then she didn't. So they started living together. So they got engaged and they got married shortly afterwards. He moves into their parents' house, which is on the North Shore. And they in fact, they build a house just sort of above where the parents' house is. And the rot of the relationship with his mother-in-law really starts to set in. They fucking hate each other. Absolutely hate each other. And when his mum comes over, she was like, I'll come and live with you. And Essie, the mother-in-law, is living with him. And he said, when he spoke to police, when he was, like, confessing, he was like, the thought of having them both under the same roof was genuinely too much to bear. And I, like, contemplated suicide. So he moved his mum 100 miles away from him.
Wow.
Because he was like, no, I'm fucked if I'm having this around. So he's basically being like, he's got this dodgy past of doing fucking weird shit everywhere. He's got these crimes, like you say, the indecent assault, the assault. He's on this extended probation. But it's actually when his mum migrates in 1982 that things start to go awry. So his mum is diagnosed with breast cancer and she dies in 1988. And this has a very profound effect on him. And then what happens is... he is then diagnosed with the same breast cancer, which, of course, is not unheard of, but is unusual in men. Any men listening, to the 5 men listening, because your girlfriend is listening to it in the kitchen, don't forget to check your tits. Same as, anyone with tits, give them a check.
Oh, they can't let us have anything, can they? Oh, you want it as well, do you?
I am almost definitely going to get it because we've talked about this before, but because I've got big old knockers and because my mum has had it twice. So it's a weird thing of having these, like, I'll say it, some of my greatest assets also being a ticking time bomb.
Listen, I've always had it in my head that I've got 12 years left, me.
Really?
I think, Tim gets really annoyed at me when I say this, but that's how I feel. Like, just a bit morbid this, but I always thought,
I've always thought I'm going to die young, but I also think that's part of me
left.
Thinking that I'm more special than I am.
Thinking I'm too iconic to reach an old age.
Genuinely, I think I'm a bit like, God, wouldn't it be tragic if I died? When actually, like, no, nothing would change. So, he gets diagnosed with this breast cancer. Now, he ends up having mastectomy as a result of it. Which is, like, to step back, that must be quite an emasculating experience. To be diagnosed with a condition that's primarily associated with women is a tricky one, I think, for most men's self-esteem. And then has an invasive mastectomy. He then gets a prostate condition, which leads to him being impotent. And this is all about the time of his sort of mid to late 50s. A time when, men's testosterone is dropping anyway and they're feeling, usurped and older. It's in midlife crisis territory. And as we say, he didn't get a sports car. He started doing murders.
At the time, after he'd had breast cancer, he separated from his wife as well. He had a wife and 2 daughters and they moved to New Zealand. There's not much information on what he was like as a father.
No.
It's quite...
No.
It's quite sparse, isn't it?
Yeah. I always think that's a sign that his kids have been like, I'm fucked if I want to be involved with this legacy in any way.
Yeah, which is fair enough. He used to volunteer at Senior Citizen Society as well. He was seen as, because he was previously married with 2 daughters, he was seen as a trustworthy person. People thought, he was living in Mossman. People just thought, he's a contented man with a nice lifestyle. He's got his job at the 4 and 20 meat pie company.
Yes. He was also addicted to fruit machines, though. That was another thing he had going on in his life, an element of stress and chaos, I would say, that he was trying to win the Jackie on the Quizzy, as Will Duggan says.
My dad enjoys a fruit machine. He's actually quite lucky at them, or he knows how to use them. I don't know, but he loves a fruit machine. Some of my loveliest childhood memories are being away on holiday and maybe sitting having a lovely pub lunch in the countryside and just looking in the corner and my dad's on the fruit machine. Lovely, happy man. Anything but to fucking talk to his family.
Well, Rachel, he deserves a holiday as well.
He does deserve... You are correct. That is right. Do you know, I must have mentioned this before. There was a fruit machine in a Weatherspoons in the print works in Manchester. This is how fucking long ago it was that I was in there. And I must have been about 20, 21. And I just put a quid in or whatever it was. And I just pressed 3 things, not knowing what I was doing. And I got the fucking jackpot.
What?
Yeah. Got the fucking jackpot. All came out in pound coins. I was like, whoa.
Have I told you about when Gaines, my sketch group, before we did a full hour, we did like a 45-minute show to see if we could...
yes. In, what was it called?
The Blind Poet.
The Blind Poet.
God, fucking deeply embarrassing. We still laugh about that because if anyone has seen Gaines or Tarot, Gaines especially, is quite dark. I mean, the fact that it's named after Ed Gein, we just didn't know how to say it properly. Gaines is quite dark, sort of daft, rude sketch. And me, Kath and Ed always laugh about how they'd be out flyering. It's a 4 p.m. show, not the fucking time that you put us on at all.
No.
And they'd be out there flying on the streets for a free fringe show, which no one wants to fucking see anyway, handing out flyers. And I've walked past them and I hear them going, late night sketch comedy, 4 p.m. Late night sketch comedy, 4 p.m. It's just like trying to prep people for like, you're going to be appalled at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. And yeah, there was a quizzy in the corner, and there was a fruit machine, and people would win it, and then they were dying so hard day after day that they would basically be having to sort of project over the sound of pound coins falling, occasionally into a cupped hand because they had some empathy. But hearing all those pound coins and absolutely none of them falling into the bucket at the end of the run.
Did they ever have a good show in there?
They had a couple of good shows, but not really, no. After them was like this thing called like Blues and Burlesque, and it was like fucking rammed, like out the door, and it was some girls singing like Tina Turner songs with their boobies out.
Oh my god!
And
at 5 p.m.
Yeah, 5 p.m. Also,
it's not
like,
Blackpool.
The sketch in it, the sketch where Ed gets his penis out and knocks the chess piece over? That was in the first 3 shows of the run. And then the pub came up to him and went, you can't do that. You can't just get your penis out in the middle of a pub. And he's like, well, it's not a pub, is it? It's a venue. This is where we're performing. And they're like, absolutely not. If you go into the toilets of that venue, they don't have wallpaper in the toilets. They have PVA'd pornography to the walls.
Oh my god.
And this is before a fucking burlesque show, and they're like, we won't allow penises in the venue. Yes, a bare breast, sure. Yes, an erect penis on paper, but not a real penis.
Fucking hell.
Yeah.
I honestly don't know how to have done that run, to go into those venues day after day.
Yeah.
And I applaud them because I couldn't have done it. I mean, I did a shit for it. 2014, my first fringe wasn't great, and I used to approach my venue with a sense of dread, thinking, why am I here? What am I doing? Every mistake you could have made to do the fringe I did in the first year, but wouldn't take it back.
Well, it's all a learning process, isn't it?
It is.
Why we're talking about this? Oh yeah, he's addicted to fruit machines. So he's living near his mum. As I say near, he's living 100 miles away from his mum. He's married,
which in Australian terms is quite near, actually.
Yeah, it is actually, isn't it? I bet that's sort of deemed as nothing because the
that's
country
neighbours.
is so vast. He's had R.I.P. neighbours, of course.
Oh fuck that shit.
Oh, here we go.
Who? Right, I'm sorry. If you're still watching Neighbours now, you're a fucking mug. Who watches Neighbours?
What do you mean?
Who watches it? People crying, getting upset because it's finishing.
Students.
Who? No, they
Students.
fucking don't. Nobody watches Neighbours. Hence the reason
Maybe
it's
they
going.
don't, actually. Because students don't watch telly, do they? They stream stuff.
No, I mean, listen, I don't even watch telly.
No.
Listen, I would rather... This is me, right? I would rather sit in fucking silence and stare at the fucking wall than watch the telly.
And those are the two options, Rachel.
Hey,
You're right.
I've got to mention this, though. So, actually, I'm more likely to listen to podcasts, right? Here's something that Tim has been doing recently. My boyfriend Tim. This is really fucking me off. He's discovered this series on YouTube that is the history of World War One and World War Two, right? Obviously, he's catching up because the third one's coming. Now, he keeps listening to it in bed. So I'll be lying there trying to get a bit of Kindle time, and all I can hear is like, and fucking like, and then this happened, and the Germans and Hitler, and I'm like, I can't. How are you, like, all right, some people listen to podcasts about serial killers to go to sleep. I listen to supernatural stuff to go to sleep. Who, in their right mind, is listening to the sounds of warfare? What is
Someone who finds you attractive.
Someone who'd rather listen to that than me speaking. That's what that is. Anyway.
The Sound of Warfare by Rachel Fairburn, and it's just you when you first wake up.
Do you know what? That is me as soon as I peel my eyes open, that. She's like, there's me, and then I'm like, That's what one of my ex-boyfriends used to say, that most people wake up with like and the sunlight coming. He said, you open your eyes and it's Very accurate.
Yeah, it was accurate. So about this time, the attacks start, although I'm sure we will cover it in the other episode because it's definitely going to be a two-parter. The murders start. Now, just prior to this, like I say, you know, there's these crimes, these larcenies, the indecent assault, the actual bodily harm he's been charged for. He's been on this probation. These attacks start happening in Melbourne where women are repeatedly battered around the head and the body, and their clothes are attempted to be sort of ripped off. One was a 25-year-old who was walking home at about 10:30 at night, and she was found completely dazed on a front lawn of a house, bleeding. And what had happened is she was walking home, he jumped her, hit her around the head, she screamed and passed out because he knocked her out, and her screaming brought people over, and they phoned the police and ran over, and then they saw this guy running away and chased him, in fact, but didn't manage to catch him. And for one of these crimes, he was arrested because he was identified and he had scratches on him, and he said, oh no, I have been having a fight with my girlfriend, that's why I'm scratched. And to the point where the police arrested him and brought him in for questioning, and he was like, honestly, like, this is just a fight, I had an altercation, I wasn't even here, He manages to sort of talk himself out of it. But as he's leaving the police station, the police have heard about this, and some police officers stop him and say, you've been questioned about this crime, right? And he was like, yeah, but I didn't do anything, you know, it's a bit of misunderstanding, I was in the wrong place at the wrong time. And like, okay, well, where were you on this date and this date? And they've already started sort of piecing together the fact that these are very similar attacks. They're incredibly violent, incredibly quick. The women are beaten in the same way. They wake up with like their underwear having been moved, some of their clothes ripped off. And at the time he was one of their only suspects. And if it wasn't for the women screaming and drawing attention to themselves and people coming over, they think that he would have gone on to rape and murder them. Yeah. So
there's a pre-murder offence that he committed that is deemed as the actual, you know, lead up to these things. So the 11th of January 1989, 84-year-old Margaret Todhunter, she was walking down Hale Road in Mosman, and he saw her, and he's in a park. He parked his car. He approaches her and he punched her in the face, and he took a purse that had $209 in it. So leaves this poor elderly lady on the floor, injured and robbed. He then takes the money and he goes to a local bar and spends the money. And the police said, oh, well, you know, this was a mugging with very little. with very little hope in finding the perpetrator. The police also said, it's very hot here, can you stop bothering us with crimes? It's
Fucking
too hot
hell.
to look for people. Please leave us alone.
Jesus Christ.
I think it's horrible. I mean, any crime's horrible, but I just feel that when somebody attacks elderly people, it really gets me. I mean, kids and the elderly, it doesn't get much more vulnerable, does it?
No. Well, speaking of vulnerable, something he starts doing about the same time, he is selling his pies, and one of the places he goes to is nursing homes, including a nursing home that his wife works at. And so what he would do is, he just had this obsession with older women that is fully blamed on his mother and his demanding mother-in-law, because men can't take responsibility for their actions altogether now. So he's with this pie company. Now, he would go to the manager's office to try and push these pies. And on the way, he would sort of wander around the wards a bit and get acquainted with where everything was and how to get out of there. And what he started doing is going into... This is unbelievably fucked up. This is one of the worst things I think we've spoken about. He would go into the palliative care wards. So that's end-of-life care. And these people are often so weak that they can't move. Mainly old ladies. And he would basically sexually assault them and molest them.
You horrible cunt.
They would sort of scream for help, and he would have worked out how to get out of there quickly, so he would just slip out and leave. And the one that his missus worked in, this woman was... Because also he kind of knew that people don't believe old people. This woman was, like, distraught because she'd been sexually assaulted. Like, can you just give women a fucking break? Is there no age that you can't sexually assault us at?
Yeah, exactly.
I fucking swear to God. Anyway, so she calls for help. The nurses come. She's obviously distraught. She explains what happened. They're like, what did he look like? Which way did he go? And as she's telling them, his wife, Gay, goes, God, that sounds like my husband. Isn't that creepy?
Here's
It's
the
like a
twist,
BTK.
Gay. Here's the twist.
Yeah. Spoiler alert. So there's one woman where they sort of pin it on him, where she describes him and he gets seen leaving her room, and then they track down that this pie salesman's in there, but ultimately no charges are brought. Or, well, no, the police investigate it, and in fact they do link it to the murders, but they also just sort of throw it away.
Yeah.
They think it's unrelated. They think it's a different type of deviancy. They don't think... There's this one woman where he was like, let me check your temperature. And then he molested her.
Just fuck off, mate. You
It's
fucking
horrible,
creep.
isn't it?
It's got shades of the Yorkshire Ripper and Jimmy Savile about it, this.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah, a lot of Savile, yeah.
I just feel, if you can go onto an end-of-life ward where the elderly are dying, and you do something like that, I don't agree with capital punishment at all. It's the mark of an uncivilised society, but I'd be hard pushed not to just go, yeah, all right, hang him. Because I just think it's... How do you live with yourself doing something like that?
Yeah, there must be a moment there where you're like, I'm not the good guy in this.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Sometimes you're in situations in your life where you're like, is this the right thing to do? Am I doing the right thing here?
Surely he should be there going, am I making things worse? Is this helping? Absolutely
Would
not.
a thermometer have been more appropriate?
Oh, fucking hell.
He's awful.
I hate him. But there's more to come, isn't there?
There's a whole nother part, because we haven't even got to the fucking murders
We
yet.
haven't even got to the murders yet. Just by way of to say thank you to everyone who sent in emails for the Q&A, which was our last episode. There were a couple of emails there that are just nice emails. I meant to show you, Fuckface and Sugar Cookie sent us an email.
Oh!
So shout out to them, and I'll forward it to you later on, Kiri. Just say I just haven't had time to answer them at the minute, because we've been mad busy, haven't we? And that's why this episode's been so long in the recording. But that's it, really. Just a thank you. And thank you to everyone who suggests episodes, even though I start shouting for no reason. We appreciate all of them. And the DC Sniper is a good episode, and we probably will do it.
Yeah, it might be a live show, or it might be a bit
live.
long.
Yeah.
Thank you to everyone who's come to see me on tour. I really appreciate it. It's going to start again soon. It's been extended into the autumn, so I'm going pretty much all over the UK. And also, my run at the Edinburgh Fringe Festival is on. It'll be our version of the touring show, and the touring show is closer to 2 because I've got lots to say. And my show that didn't tour, Empathy Pains, the one about, spoiler alert, about online abuse and non-offending paedophiles, is out now on sale on Gumroad. Thank you to everyone who's bought it so far. I really appreciate it. It's in my link in my bio on my Instagram.
I suppose see, I'm terrible at doing this. I always go, all right, that's it, got nothing to say. Well, I have. I'm in Edinburgh this year for the Fringe, but it's not on sale yet. It will be on sale soon, maybe this week, who knows. I tell you, this is business chat. I don't think the Fringe brochure's worth it anymore, is it? Things have changed.
Here's a behind the scenes. You have to pay hundreds and hundreds of pounds to register your show at the Fringe, right? So you get this brochure, which I don't agree with anyway. We don't need paper in this day and age. So what you're really paying for is the app. And every ticket that's sold through the app, you should know if you're a comedy fan, they take a commission on that you absorb the cost of. Yeah. So if you buy tickets directly from the venue, the artist gets a bigger cut.
Yes.
And the margins are incredibly, incredibly narrow. So where you can, don't use the Fringe app. Go straight to the venue website, or the comedian will probably have that link on their website. So there you go. If you want them to get like 5% more or whatever for their tickets, which is a difference between breaking even and not. Yeah. Then go direct. Is that rude to say? I don't think so. Right?
Why is that rude? Fuck them.
Well, no. It's more like I hate the Fringe Society with a fire.
Yeah, I mean, here, pay all this money and we will do nothing for you.
Yeah, and when COVID happened, everyone was like, what are you going to do to help artists? And they went, we're a charity. And then they got fucking loads off the government. Yeah,
I think the Fringe Society is not helpful in any way, shape or form. And I think the only good thing about COVID in terms of the Fringe is it seems that you're getting a little bit more control back, in the sense of, I realise you don't need to be in the brochure. Who fucking cares? Yeah.
Well, if you have the pre-sales, I think so, because that's a decision I've got to make. If enough people buy tickets now, then I can, but otherwise I'm just going to have to take the punt and go in it.
Also, so if you want to come and see any of my previews, which are coming up, there's one in Brighton, Leicester, where the fuck else am I going? Edinburgh. Look, there's about 5. Look at my Twitter, it's on a link there. So yeah, come.
Yeah, it'd be lovely to see you live.
That'd be nice.
I haven't seen that show, so I'd love to see that.
I think I'm a bit of a cunt in it. I feel it's the real me. It's basically, the entire show is me as if I've just woken up.
That's so funny.
But anyway, we digress. Thank you for listening. Might not sound like it. I really do appreciate it, genuinely.
We both do, yeah.
And thank you to... we might have some news about Edinburgh regarding the podcast soon as well. Fingers crossed. I think I can say that.
I think we might have some live events bubbling away. Keep an eye on our social medias for them. We'll tell you there straight away. And genuinely thanks for all your support, guys. We really appreciate it as a heartfelt moment. Anything you want to sign off with, the absolute witch?
Yeah.
Where have you gone? I said, anything you want to sign off with, the absolute witch, and then you went quiet?
Yeah, because it disconnected. It's a fucking... Even the internet doesn't want to listen to us any more than it has to.
Go, yeah, and it sounded like you were gearing up for something.
No, not at all. It just went off. Okay. I'm going to stop recording now. Thank you very much for listening. Bye-bye.
Bye.